How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to another episode of MODlight for Don't Starve Together, in which I will be featuring some of the most prominent mods that have appeared on the Steam Workshop for Don't Starve Together in the past week. So to get started, all of the mods that I'm actually going to be covering this week are server mods. They require the mod itself to be installed on all clients that are actually playing that world. And the first one we're going to be looking at is called a water mod. It is by a couple of modders, Filigrani and Cunning Fox, it looks like. So this mod is actually quite expansive. And so I'm going to jump in and I'm going to show it to you. There's no configuration beforehand. You just enable it before you actually create the world, because it actually adds some very unique set pieces to the world generation. You're not going to be able to enable this mod after the world has already started. You have to regenerate the world from the start to have everything appear in it. Here we are. So let's talk about a water mod. Now, there are a lot of things that this mod does, but mainly it adds an entirely new tab to the craft menu, that being the water tab. So right here's the water tab. This is an entirely new tab, and as you can see, there are a lot of craftables that are made available through it. If we go from the top, we have an empty cup, a bucket, a barrel, a beer barrel, a kettle, a mini hydro station, well parts, herbal tea, monster brew, ghostly brew, strange drink, and flour. So I'm going to cover some of these things because I have them put down right away to begin with at the moment right here. Okay, I'm going to rotate the camera around like that. So right here you can see we have examine strange dirt pile. Now this strange dirt pile is where wells will be. At the moment, I'm not sure exactly how these things spawn. They do not always appear to be around these plugged sinkholes, but what you have to do is you have to go ahead and dig them. You have to just dig them several times until it eventually will turn into a hole. There we go. Now it's a hole in the dirt. And now we can go ahead and craft our well. Just a second here. The well, interestingly enough, has this mushroom canopy to it. So we just, after we craft those parts, give it to the hole, and it builds the well, just like that. Now we can turn the well on. The bucket will be lowered and come back up, filled with water. To use the water, we'll have to give it an empty bucket. Now I've already crafted some empty buckets here, so we have the ability to just go ahead and grab that water. So what can you do with bucketed water? Well, for one thing, you could add it to the beer barrel in an attempt to brew some beer. I actually have this barrel already set up, so you can also add it to this this empty barrel right there. So I just emptied my bucket of water into that barrel, and the idea behind that, of course, would be so that you can stockpile water up and you don't actually have to be carrying the whole thing in your inventory. It's almost night now, so I'm actually going to start a fire there. Let's talk about some of the other additions. So you've already seen the bucket. How about the kettle? So if we build the kettle like right here, this is one of the things that can use water. So we can go ahead, get some water out of our barrel that we had stockpiled water in, and give it to the kettle, like that. Now you can see the kettle is boiling because it has the little lid is tipping back and forth on it. And Wilson is finally a Brit now. What can we do with a kettle? Well, we can craft some stuff for it. Let's go ahead and craft some herbal tea. Like that. Obviously, normally you could get tea leaves from these trees. Right here is a tea tree. There are a couple of other tea trees over on this side of the map. Right there. You can dig them up and transplant them. They work much like saplings do. They do not appear to need fertilizer. So that's that. Let's go ahead and just pick this one once, just for the heck of it. There we go. Got tea leaves. They apparently do not spoil, but some of the other additions do spoil. So now our water has finally boiled. You can see the little top has come off of the actual kettle, and we can go ahead and add the herbal tea to it. Now the cover's back on. It's going to boil a little bit more, and then we're going to need to craft a cup to actually harvest the tea from the kettle when it's finally done. So we're just going to wait for that to be done, and then we can start looking at some of the other things that exist around the map here. Some of the additional additions that have been added. Okay, so like normally you can just say, you examine kettle. No, you need a cup. You need to give it this little cup like that, and now I have a cup of tea that I can eat. So if I go ahead and eat that, give me a little bit of stuff. And Wilson does a big yawn. I'm not sure. I think it might have actually sped me up. There are no notes as to exactly what the foods do. They kind of are one of those things you have to figure out for yourself. So some of the other additions here, for example, are cut wheat. We actually have a wheat plant here. Let's just go ahead and plant that down. These wheat plants do not need to be fertilized, and once they're fully grown, you can cut them down for wheat. Wheat can be used to make a couple of new recipes in the crock pot. One such recipe, actually we would need to convert it to flour. So converting wheat to flour is pretty simple. You just go here to the water menu, right there is flour. We can convert wheat into flour just as simply as that. And then flour can be put into the crock pot to make a couple of new recipes. I believe if we put 3 flour in and 1 twig, let's try to find a twig, that we're actually going to be making some bread here. So let's go ahead, pick that twig, that sapling twig, just like that. Bring it back, stick it in the crock pot. We're going to be cooking up some bread. Hopefully it's going to be bread. Our well has replenished. We can go ahead and lower that back into it. Coming up with another bucket of water. There's also a well that already built over on this side of the map, a bit of a ways away. There is no real way. Let's lower that one as well, and we will just go ahead and grab the water. Done. There's really no way to tell exactly how or where these things spawn in the map. Like, some of them actually have icons, but other ones don't. Let's grab the water from this well as well. We got 2 buckets of water. That's excellent. Go ahead and stockpile that water inside my rain barrel. The rain barrel holds a total of 5 buckets of water, according to the mod details. Let's go ahead and harvest our bread. We got bread from the crock pot. Go ahead and eat that. Quite nice. Gives me a fair amount of hunger. I think it's quite well balanced, and that is basically what wheat is for. Let's go look at the map, because there are some things that do show up. So while I did mention that the hole that where you can build the well does not show up, and neither do the tea trees, the wheat shows up. As a matter of fact, I transplanted it from down here. You can see in the savanna, obviously the first place where wheat would be growing. And then also up here we have new additional icons, or coffee bean plants up here in the desert. That's where those spawn. I think there are a couple of other things that are of note around here as well, but I don't quite remember what they were. The wells do show up once they're built, but when there are still holes, they don't show up, so you're going to have to do that yourself. Now, it should be noted that, obviously, this map, I used the console commands to reveal the whole thing, just to speed things up here a little bit. That way I could get around to showing you as much of this mod as possible. So there are a lot of different things you can craft here. I'm not going to go through the rest of them. I figure it's simply going to take too much time and distract from some of the other mods that I should get to. But as you can tell here, the creators of this mod put a lot of time and effort into crafting this. I mean, look at that. Animated kettle and everything. A lot of these are quite impressive models. A lot of them actually fit along with the aesthetic of pretty much everything else in the game. I think the well should have actually required a mushroom that would help explain the mushroom cap to it. But other than that, it's a great looking mod. Really, really impressed with it. Adds an entire water tab to the crafting menu. Definitely worth a look if you're looking for some additional little buildables to really spice up your gameplay and add a lot of content to the game. So once again, that is a water mod. That's the name of it. And you can download it from the Steam Workshop. The link to it will be in the description below. Okay, moving on. The next mod we're going to be looking at is a little one by Potter Lee. I believe I covered one of their mods in last week's episode. It's called Ban the Slots. When you pick up items, they won't go into the slots that you choose to ban. You can configure this mod to adjust how many slots on your character's inventory should actually be banned. By default, I believe it is 5, like that. We could just lower it to something more reasonable, like 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and enable it and then resume the world that I was playing. Welcome back. So as you might have recalled, I enabled those 2. So the first 2 slots will not be occupied. Let's go ahead and dig these mushrooms up here. And as you'll see, the slot that they immediately occupy, they skip the very first 2 and go to the ones after that. And that's pretty much how the mod works. So this will help guarantee that you don't actually accidentally, if you're one of the people who accidentally ends up with items that they don't want in those slots, slots that are primarily used for carrying items such as your weapon or your armor or your headgear. Yeah. You can obviously manually put things in those slots, and like I said, or as I pointed out in the mod itself, you can actually adjust it up to about 10 slots. Not exactly sure how that would work, but yeah, just additional flexibility. If that is some problem you're currently having with the game, you might want to check out the mod. Might help ease that learning curve a little bit for you. Okay, the next mod being featured is the Icemaker 3000 by Connor. We can indeed configure this, and basically what the Icemaker is a port of the Icemaker from Don't Starve Shipwrecked, the DLC for Don't Starve. single player game. In the configuration, we can choose the max amount of fuel, apparently, that you can add to the machine. 90 is by default, so that's 90 seconds, I believe. We also have the spawn time. So in other words, how long will it take before ice is created from the machine? Let's just leave that at default and resume the world. Okay, so by going into the Science tab, you can find the Icemaker 3000 right down here at the bottom. It costs 1 thermal stone, 5 logs, and 2 electrical doodads, exactly as it did in Shipwrecked. If you're not familiar with Shipwrecked and how this thing works, because it works exactly the same unless you tweak it, you can add fuel to it, such as logs, and it will work on producing some ice. So I'm going to go ahead here, chop down a tree so we can get some wood, and then add it to the machine so it will start producing ice. Now you might be wondering, why would you need ice? And it's a good question. Like in Don't Starve Shipwrecked, it was more of an issue than it is in Don't Starve Together. There's ice that exists throughout quite a few parts of the year. Let's add a couple of fuel to it. You don't want to add more than 2 fuel at a time, otherwise it will simply go to waste on the default settings. There, we got some ice for that. We can make meatballs with it. It effectively would allow us to convert, say, twigs, for example, or logs into food in this way. It could be especially helpful for players who want to eke it out down below in the caves or in the ruins of the world. Other than that, I'm not exactly sure why you would need it, but it is available now. You can tell it still uses the artwork has not been changed at all. It still uses the bamboo artwork, so it does not quite, it clashes a little bit with some of the other items. Like you could put down a jerky rack and you'll notice these branches that create the legs are actually brown, but the Icemaker 3000s are made out of green bamboo, kind of tropical wood. So that's the Icemaker 3000. Pretty much the same. It's pretty much just a port of the item from, let's get our last ice here. Pretty much just a port of it from Shipwrecked. Last but not least, we have the Infinite Telelocator Focus by Felix the Judge. The description says simply, Telelocator gems no longer break. There are no configurations for it, so let's simply jump in and give this a test. Hey, so welcome back. We're going to be taking a look at the Telelocator. It's in the Magic tab, as per usual. Just scroll down to it. First, we'll need the locator staff. Then we also need to build the Telelocator Focus. Just place that down right there. And now we're going to need 3 purple gems. I personally do not have space for this at the moment. Just drop that off. And 2 and 3. Okay, so now how the Telelocator works, it's the same as it does normally. You load up these sockets. No, that's actually not. You load up these 3 sockets here with gems. You equip the staff. And then when you're a sufficient distance away from the Telelocator, you go ahead and cast a spell. And a storm will start. It'll start raining. You'll get up, and I'm here at the Telelocator. And then you might have noticed the gems are still in the slots. So in other words, all it cost me was 20% off the Telelocator staff, making it a lot cheaper to actually move around the map. We can also teleport other animals into. Let's teleport this crow. Teleport it in there into the triangle as well. Does not actually destroy the gems either. Normally it would. Normally it would use all 3 of those gems each time you use the Telelocator staff. Unfortunately, we started a bit of a fire. That is known to happen. If you go ahead and use the Telelocator Focus, just make sure that you know what you're doing when you use it. Okay, bird, get out of there. So now you might be wondering, is this completely overpowered and broken? So let's spawn down a boss. So there we go. We have a Deerclops. Let's teleport him. And as you can see, the Deerclops is in the Telelocator Focus, but all 3 gems have been removed. So it works for regular mobs. It does not work for the boss. It works for yourself. It works for regular mobs, not the boss. So that pretty much completes it for this week's MODlight for Don't Starve Together. If you have any suggestions on how the episode could be improved, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. If you found any of the mods presented here particularly compelling, go ahead and check them out and their creators. All the links to them will be in the description below as well. If you enjoy any of them, make sure to thank them for their hard work. A lot of people put a lot of time and effort into some of these mods, as you can clearly see. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.